Welcome to This Explainer, where we take these massive shifting global trends and break them down into something you can actually see and wrap your head around. Today, we're diving into the absolute behemoth of an industrial powerhouse that is quietly fueling our entire modern tech era. You know, while everyone is glued to their screens, obsessing over the latest, shiny AI software, we are going to take a step back and look at the heavy metal reality that actually makes all of it possible. We're talking about why GE Vernova absolutely dominates the energy transition and the AI boom.
So it all really kicks off with one massive, inciting question, right? How do we actually power the AI revolution? I mean, everyone is just hyped about the capabilities of large language models and generative AI, but there is this hidden global crisis right now, and it's a severe power bottleneck. Artificial intelligence requires data centers, and those data centers, they require an absolutely staggering amount of electricity just to cool and run those massive server farms. The software is totally ready to go, but the physical world is kind of struggling to keep the lights on.
And this comparison right here perfectly hits the nail on the head when it comes to the problem and the crazy new solution. Traditional grids are just slow. They're slow to upgrade, they're bogged down by public regulatory delays, and they simply cannot handle the massive demand spikes that a brand new multi-gigawatt data center needs. So, what are the big tech giants actually doing about it? They're literally bypassing the traditional grids entirely. They are building their own independent gas turbines right next to their data centers. They're essentially acting as their own mini utility companies because they just can't sit around waiting for the grid to catch up. They need reliable, fast, massive scale power, and they need it today.
All right, so who steps in to solve this giant power mystery? Enter GE Vernova. Now, you obviously know the name General Electric, but GE Vernova is a completely brand new entity. They spun off from GE in 2024 to operate as a fully independent public company, hyper-focused on being a global energy leader. Look, they aren't building the AI software, they are building the physical, massive infrastructure required to actually power it. They are uniquely positioned right at the exact intersection of the global energy transition and the explosive power demands driven by these massive new AI data centers.
Now, to really put this into perspective, we have to talk about the sheer scale of what they do. 30%. GE Vernova's equipment already generates approximately 30% of the entire world's electricity. Just let that sink in for a second. Nearly 1/3 of the globe's power flows through their machines. So no, this is absolutely not some scrappy startup trying to break into a new market. This is the foundational bedrock of global energy, and they are now hyper-focused on solving the single most critical bottleneck in the tech world today.
So how do they actually pull this off? Let's take a look at this blueprint. On the physical side of things, you've got the heavy infrastructure, right? Everything from traditional power plants to massive grid networks and wind farms. But then on the financial side, you see their investment thesis, a staggering order backlog, a direct pipeline to AI data centers, and really robust revenue growth. It perfectly maps the physical hardware to the financial reality. It's basically the industry secret for how this company is structured for total global dominance. To make this whole shebang work, GE Vernova is divided up into three very distinct critical pillars. First up is power. This is their absolute cash cow, delivering the heavy-duty natural gas, nuclear, and hydro turbines needed for reliable baseload electricity. Second is electrification, because hey, generating power is great, but you actually have to move it, right? This segment handles the transformers and high-voltage direct current systems, the real foundation of the grid. And finally, there's wind. This is their turnaround segment, and they're heavily focused on manufacturing and servicing both onshore and offshore wind turbines through some ongoing structural improvements. Now, inside that power segment, there is one piece of technology that is just the absolute star of the show right now, the H-class gas turbine. By definition, these are highly efficient, heavy-duty natural gas turbines. But why do they matter so much? Because they provide incredibly reliable, super-fast baseload power. When a tech giant decides they're going to bypass the local grid and build their own power source for a multi-billion-dollar AI data center, this is exactly the equipment they are buying. And GE Vernova is the premier supplier of these critical machines.
Speaking of buying, the demand for that equipment has led to this absolutely staggering number, $163 billion. That is GE Vernova's total order backlog as of the first quarter of 2026. I mean, wow. Let that massive scale land for a second. In the world of heavy infrastructure, a backlog this big isn't just a to-do list. It's basically a multi-year financial annuity. It gives them this exceptional level of earnings visibility for the next 3 to 5 years, acting as a massive defensive shield if there are any short-term economic slowdowns.
And if you're wondering exactly where that massive growth is coming from right now, just consider this figure. $2.4 billion. That is the value of equipment orders booked by just the electrification segment in Q1 of 2026 alone, strictly to support data centers. This isn't some theoretical, maybe someday future demand. Tech companies are signing billions of dollars in contracts right now, today, just for the electrical switchgear, the transformers, and the grid modernization software they need to physically plug in their AI ambitions.
So, when we pull all this data together, their financial dominance as of early 2026 is just crystal clear, with total quarterly revenues hitting $9.34 billion and a 16% year-over-year growth rate across all segments. The momentum is undeniable. But here's the real kicker. Selling the equipment is literally just day one. Heavy infrastructure requires decades of maintenance and upgrades, and that long-term services revenue carries significantly higher margins than the initial sale, which means they are turning these billions in backlog into decades of highly profitable service contracts.
And, we aren't just talking about powering Silicon Valley's data centers here. They are expanding their global footprint incredibly fast. A great example of this is a recent major agreement they secured to supply those advanced HA gas turbines for EVN's massive 1.6 gigawatt liquefied natural gas power plant project over in Vietnam. It really highlights how GE Vernova is stepping up to be the infrastructure partner of choice for emerging markets that are desperately trying to modernize their energy grids.
Okay, but let's take a quick step back for a grounded reality check, because obviously nothing is completely without friction. There are three main structural risk factors we really need to watch here. First, the wind segment, especially offshore, is still going through a complex turnaround and has historically struggled with supply chain issues. Second, heavy metal infrastructure is totally at the mercy of severe policy and regulatory delays. Getting permits can push revenue recognition back by years. And finally, interest rate sensitivity. Prolonged high rates just make financing these massive utility capital expenditures way more expensive, which could definitely delay some future orders.
Which really leaves us with this final, vital question to chew on. As we watch this absolutely explosive growth of artificial intelligence, how is this heavy metal energy infrastructure going to dictate the future of our digital world? AI might be software, but at the end of the day, it is bound by the physical limits of electricity and the turbines that generate it. GE Vernova is literally building the unseen pick-and-shovel hardware for the 21st century. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep looking behind the screen to see what really powers our world.